Okay, I added some page flipping mechanics. This is what the game looks like. This is just test spells. So there's Fireball, Freeze, and Magic Missile. The game spawns with Freeze as your default spell. Can't spam it. The sounds are good. You can't keep flipping. I'm trying to keep flipping. Trying to keep flipping. Nothing. How does it work? Let me turn this music off. Okay, what do we do? Well, at the very beginning, we need to set the pages to be whatever they are, because there's no guarantee that we're going to start with freeze or whatever. So for now, I have a little bit of hard coding. So one, we need to know what current page we're on so that we can track it. There's going to be an array of different spell names of all the spells that you're holding, this array, and I need to know which one you're currently on. That way, when I'm flipping to the right, I can get the next page and update things. And if you're flipping to the left, I can get the previous page or the previous spell and update things. And if you're on the first page, when we check, we don't find anything, so we don't do anything. When we're on the last page and we try and flip later, we don't find anything, so we don't do anything. So what do? For now, the first index is freeze. I just have this hard-coded for now. I can replace it whenever I want. It's fine. So we're setting this page to be the first one. And then I have dynamic material instances that allow me to change them. And when I change them, I have them set as rep notify. That way, whenever I change them, they immediately update the material in the book. Here's the book. The book has these materials, and it just so happens that material 3 is page 1, material 2 is page 2, or sorry, 3 page element 4 is the second page, element 5 is the third page, and we only have 3 pages. That's it. That way, we always have a little page on the left, so we never run out, because if you ran out of pages on the left and you kept flipping pages, it would look like they're popping out of existence, or into existence. Same thing with pages coming from the right. So, we first set the starting pages, so we create 3 materials, and for now, I'm just setting them to be these 3. But they can be whatever the default ones are. So I'll set whatever the default spells are and update them here. Whenever we update these, it sets the page to be in the mesh, to be the proper material. Cool. So once we've updated the starting pages and the game and the book starts correctly with this, okay, now we need to add flipping mechanics. The flipping mechanics, what do? Well, if we're turning pages left, then we need to get the next page. If I'm turning one page to go left, I need to know that there's a page behind it. Otherwise, you can't flip to a page if there's no other page. Like in a real book, you could flip and there'd be nothing there, but I don't want there to be nothing there. You wouldn't flip the page if you're on the last one. So what do? We find the current spell that we're at. That way we can track where we're at in the book. Go to the next index and see, does it exist? If it doesn't exist, i.e. if it's not within the length of spells, so let's say we have 7 spells, well, those indices are going to be 0 through 6 in the array. There's not going to be a 7. So if we find one that isn't less than 7, i.e. we find 7 or greater, it doesn't exist, don't flip, so false. If it is within range, then we flip. We have a little check to make sure that we can flip, because otherwise you could keep on spamming it and it would spam the sound, and you could press it fast enough so that the animation that we play can't complete and you just spam sound. You're pressing pretty quick because you're panicking and the book isn't working. It would just be trash. We play audio after because we are flipping now, so we're playing audio. Then we're going to get the next spell. So same logic here. Well, this is checking to see if there is a next spell in the book. Our next page, this is actually getting it. So what do? We find where we're currently at in the array. Let's say we have 30 spells in our book. We're on the 17th one. Okay, so we get the index 17. Now let's go to 18, the next one, and figure out what spell that is. Well, that gives us a name. Well, how do we end up getting the material that matches the name? Easy. We go into our data table, and our data table has a material for each spell. So if we pass in a spell, and it's valid and found, it's going to have a material. Right now, only 3 out of 20-ish of my spells have a material. Oh, I just had an extra thought. My light spell needs to come with other things that aren't going to be... Maybe the page is going to be complex. It has multiple things. That'll be interesting. I'm not sure. Okay, well, whatever. We pass in the name. The name matches the name of the row of the spell, and then that gives us the material that I have inside the data table. For example, Fireball has a material. Freeze doesn't. Freeze is a material. Magic Missile has a material. The others do not right now, but I'll add them soon. So we get the material and we create a dynamic material from that material so that we can use it to change materials live at runtime. So we've gotten the material for the next page. Awesome. Well, what do? We need to actually update the next page to look like that material. That way when we flip our current page out of the way, we see the spell we expect. I don't want to see some random spell and then it gets updated. I want to see the next page as you'd expect. So if I'm turning freeze and the next spell is Magic Missile, I want to make sure that this next page is Magic Missile. Maybe I turned from Magic Missile to freeze, and then who gives a shit what happens to Magic Missile at that point? We can't see it. The point is that when I do see it, I need it to be to make sense, to look what it needs to. Then we flip the page left so that we see the page 3, because the pages are 1, 2, and 3. And then afterwards, we need I have an animation state, an anim blueprint, and the default state is this page reset. This is how the book spawns in, and it spawns in with page 3 over here, or sorry, page 3 under this page 2 is this page, and page 1 is over here. That way, whenever I flip a page, we go back to this default state, so I don't have to worry about whether the page we're currently looking at is page 3 or page 1, because if I flip to the left, we are on page 3, but if I flip to the right, we're now on page 1. And then I would have to add a check to see, oh, if I flipped, how did I last flip? If I last flipped to the left, well, we're on page 3. If I last flipped to the right, we're on page 1. And then I have to update either 1 or 3. That's trash. Let's just set it to a default state. So all I have to worry about is the next page, which is either 3 or 1. And after I flip, we instantly go back to page 2. But before we do, I update page 2 to be whatever page we're on. Here's the example. We're on page 2. We pull page 2 back to get to page 3 and it's Magic Missile. The second we do that, page 2 is hidden. I update page 2 to be Magic Missile, and then we snap it back so that page 2 is exposed and it is already Magic Missile. That way we never run out of pages. Basically, we flip a page and we're running out of pages, but not really, because the pages go back to default so that we never run out. Something kind of like that. And then we have a default state. Actually, we're not even using this state machine. Okay, well, maybe it actually didn't matter. Let me make sure see if this still works. Okay, that's how it's supposed to work. So that once we finish an animation, we finish playing it, it immediately completes and then goes back to the default state, which is this guy. I initially, in the animations, had this set to not blend out, but the problem is that means that we're stuck on the last frame forever and the animation will never complete, and you will get an interrupted after it finishes, but you will not get a completed. And the problem is that the interrupted doesn't trigger at the right time. And actually, interrupted won't even trigger immediately. There's some issues with it. So what do? We make it end properly. We allow it to blend out so that it goes in it right there. Right there. And it ends and goes back to whatever the default animation is, because the montage, that temporary little one-off animation, is done. So we go back to page 2 being the default one that we see. What do? The second we do this, I need to first, the second we complete it, I need to update the page 2. Hold on, there's a gnat. I've killed 3. I accidentally let my groceries go a little, or my trash go a little too long. So what do? We update the page 2 material to be the page 3. So we have flipped and we're on page 3. And then we update this and go back to page 2 being the visible one. So page 2 is page 3. So we flip page 3 to see page 3. We make 2 match page 3, and then we go back to page 2. And this happens fast enough to where we don't see page 2 turn from something to another thing. The other way, well, we check to see, is there another page after this? Is there this is page flipping to the right. So we're checking, to the left. Is there a page before the current one? Find the current page, subtract 1. Does it exist? Is it less than 0? Because if it is, we don't want to do anything. So we're checking to see, is it actually 0 or greater? Is it a valid index? If it is, then we start flipping. We play the audio. We then go and actually find that previous page and get the name, get a material from it, update page 1, which is the page that we're flipping onto page 2, play that animation, and then we say that, hey, that's the page we're now on. We're now on Fireball from Freeze. We're now on Fireball. So we say, hey, we're on Fireball now. But then we make page 2 match Fireball, and then we go back to the default animation state where page 2 is Fireball. We don't want to stay on page 1 because when we flip, if we do the other animation, so if we flipped the left page, but then our next animation is flipping to the right, what's going to happen is it's going to immediately put page 2 in the middle and flip page 2, because this animation flips page 2 over 3. This animation flips page 1 over 2. So if I flip page 1 and leave it, we're on page 1. If I then start this animation, it's going to start from its first frame where page 2 is the default page, and it's going to be bad. So we reset it back to the default state. That's why we have this animation always going. That way we start with page 2 here. We flip page 3, or we flip page 2 to see page 3, and then we update page 2 to look like page 3, and then we snap it so we're back at page 2 seamlessly. Excuse me. And then if we flip page 1 to go over page 2, we're on page 2. We're on page 1. We make page 2 look like page 1, and then we snap back so that page 2 is what we see. That way we're always on page 2. Always. So page 2 flipped, or page 1 flipped to go over page 2, but this is actually page 2 now. And we can see because there's a page here, this is page 1 now. So we're back on the default state right now. You can go and see, we're on the default state. That's what's happening. It's just that I updated the texture so that this matches page 1. If I could sneak and somehow look under here, then this page would still also be Fireball. But if I keep trying to flip, I can't do anything because there's no valid index before Fireball. If I flip a page to the left, we're going to flip page 2 to see page 3. It's going to find what is after Fireball that's Freeze. So it's going to update to be Freeze. This is now Freeze. And actually, I should flip these keybinds because this feels bad. Oh, so close. Oh, it's so much better. Okay, so we flip page 2 to see page 3. Page 3 becomes Freeze right before we actually do the flipping. We see Freeze, and then immediately after the animation finishes, page 2, which we just flipped, becomes Freeze from Fireball, and then comes back. So, seamless. Works. I like it. And I have a little attenuation so we can't hear it too far away. Cool. Now I can add all the textures I want. I can add as many spells as I want. Cool. Now I want to make it so that you can only cast the spells that are in your spellbook. And then on different game modes, I just set what the spells are. On one game mode, you have all your spells. On another, you only have these. On another, you only have those. Something like that. That way the spellbook is actually helpful. But then I have to add glow to the spells, which would be interesting and maybe very hard. I'm not sure. I'm just going to, I think I have to update the materials to add an opacity, something like that. And then either I make another version of the material that is just grayed out, or I change the color of the material, or there's a few things I could do. Basically, I just have to kind of fade it out so that the spell isn't usable. And then every time you try and cast a spell, it checks to see, 1, if you have the spell, and 2, if it's usable, and then you cast a spell. Something like that. So pages are turnable. That's it for now.